Before we get into the story, leave a comment and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The neon lights of the Bellagio casino reflected off the polished marble floors as 26-year-old Emily Brooks navigated through the maze of slot machines and poker tables, balancing a tray of cocktails with practiced ease. Her black waitress uniform was standard issue, her smile was professional, and her patience for entitled high rollers was running dangerously low after a double shift. It was 2 in the morning, and the Friday night crowd showed no signs of thinning. Bachelor parties, tourist groups, and serious gamblers all blurred together in a sea of noise and flashing lights. Emily had moved to Las Vegas 3 years ago with dreams of becoming a choreographer, but like so many others, she'd discovered that dreams didn't pay rent. The waitressing job at the Bellagio paid her bills while she taught dance classes at a small studio during the day. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and she'd learned to handle everything from grabby drunks to terrible tippers with the same calm efficiency. Tonight, however, was testing even her considerable patience. A group of Wall Street types had taken over 3 blackjack tables, ordering top-shelf liquor like water and treating the staff like servants. Emily delivered their drinks with her professional smile intact, but internally, she was counting down the minutes until her shift ended. That's when she saw him. Tall, devastatingly handsome in a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary, with dark hair and eyes that looked both intelligent and slightly unfocused from expensive whiskey. He was sitting alone at the high-stakes poker table, playing with the kind of reckless confidence that came from having more money than sense. "Another scotch," he said, without looking up as Emily approached. His voice carried the crisp authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Certainly, sir. Which brand would you prefer?" "The expensive kind." He finally glanced up, and Emily found herself looking into green eyes that held a dangerous combination of charm and arrogance. "You're new here. I've been working here for 2 years, actually. You're probably just not used to looking at waitresses' faces." The comment slipped out before she could stop it. Emily tensed, expecting anger or complaint, but instead, the man laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his entire face. "Fair point. Most people in my position don't." He studied her with new interest. "What's your name?" "Emily. And yours?" "Does it matter?" "Not particularly. I'll still get your scotch either way." His smile widened. "I like you. You're honest." "I'm tired. There's a difference." Emily turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Wait. Have a drink with me when you're done with your shift." Emily turned back, raising an eyebrow. "I don't drink with customers. Casino policy? I'll make it worth your while." "I'm sure you would. The answer is still no." She walked away, feeling his eyes on her back. Something about his assumption that she could be bought irritated her more than usual. Yes, she was a waitress, but that didn't mean she was for sale. Emily had dealt with hundreds of wealthy men who thought their money entitled them to anything they wanted, and she'd learned long ago that the best response was a polite but firm rejection. Over the next hour, the man, whose name she still didn't know, continued ordering drinks and leaving increasingly generous tips. Emily accepted the money professionally, but didn't change her demeanor. When he asked her to join him again, she declined again. When he offered to take her to an expensive restaurant after her shift, she suggested he take himself instead. "You're really not interested?" he asked, sounding genuinely baffled. "I'm really not interested in being another conquest for a bored billionaire playing in Vegas." "What makes you think I'm a billionaire?" Emily gestured at his watch, his shoes, the platinum credit card sitting on the table. "Lucky guess." "And what makes you think you'd be a conquest?" "Experience. Men like you don't actually want conversation or company. You want validation that your money can buy anything, including people. Something shifted in his expression, a flash of what might have been hurt before the arrogant mask returned. You have me all figured out. Most people aren't that complicated. Good luck with your game, sir. When Emily's shift finally ended at 4 in the morning, she changed out of her uniform and headed for the employee exit, her feet aching and her body exhausted. The cool desert air was a relief after hours in the artificially chilled casino. She was halfway to the parking garage when she heard footsteps behind her. "I never got to properly introduce myself," said a familiar voice. Emily turned to find the mysterious poker player from earlier, now looking slightly more disheveled, but no less handsome. "Are you following me?" "Technically, I'm walking in the same direction. I'm staying at the hotel." "Convenient. Good night, Mr. Expensive Scotch." "Carter. My name is Carter Blackwell." Emily paused despite herself. Even she recognized that name. Blackwell Industries, tech billionaire, 32 years old, and one of the most eligible bachelors in America, according to Forbes, and apparently very drunk. "Well, Mr. Blackwell, it's been illuminating. Try to make it back to your room without falling into a fountain. Why won't you have dinner with me?" He moved closer, not threatening but definitely invading her personal space. "I'm rich, reasonably attractive according to my publicist, and I'm genuinely interested in getting to know you. You're also drunk, entitled, and used to getting whatever you want. I'm not interested in being another story you tell your Wall Street friends about that time in Vegas. What if I promised this wouldn't be just a story? Then I'd say you're even drunker than you look." Carter laughed again, that same genuine sound that had surprised her earlier. "You really don't like me. I don't know you well enough to dislike you. I just know your type. And what's my type? Rich, bored, looking for entertainment in all the wrong places. You'll wake up tomorrow, nurse your hangover, and fly back to whatever penthouse you came from. Meanwhile, I'll still be here serving drinks and teaching dance classes, and our paths will never cross again. That's how these things work." Carter was quiet for a moment, studying her face in the dim parking garage light. "What if I don't want it to work that way?" "Then you'll be disappointed. I'm good at disappointing people. Good night, Mr. Blackwell." Emily walked away, refusing to look back even though she could feel his eyes following her. Men like Carter Blackwell were dangerous, not because they were bad people, but because they lived in a completely different world. A world where money solved problems and bought experiences and turned people into temporary diversions. Emily had worked too hard to build her small, stable life to risk it on a billionaire's whim. When she finally reached her beat-up Honda Civic, she allowed herself one glance back. Carter was still standing where she'd left him, hands in his pockets, looking oddly lonely in his expensive suit. For just a moment, Emily felt something like sympathy. Then she reminded herself that billionaires didn't need sympathy from waitresses, started her car, and drove home to her tiny apartment. She had no way of knowing that in less than 12 hours, her entire life would change forever. Emily woke up to her phone ringing with aggressive persistence. Groaning, she reached for it without opening her eyes, squinting at the bright screen. 9 missed calls from her best friend and roommate, Jessica. That was unusual. Jess knew Emily worked late and needed her sleep. "This better be an emergency," Emily mumbled into the phone. "Oh, it's an emergency, all right. Emily, why didn't you tell me you got married last night?" Emily's eyes snapped open. "What are you talking about? I came straight home after work." "Then explain why there are photos all over the internet of you and Carter Blackwell at a Vegas wedding chapel." "That's impossible. I rejected him like 5 times and came home alone." "Well, someone who looks exactly like you is in these pictures, and the marriage license looks pretty official. Emily, what the hell happened last night?" Emily's heart began to race as she grabbed her laptop, typing frantically. Within seconds, she found what Jessica was talking about. Photos of her, definitely her, in her waitress uniform standing next to Carter Blackwell in what appeared to be a cheap Vegas wedding chapel. She was smiling. He had his arm around her waist, and an Elvis impersonator was clearly visible in the background. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God is right. The story broke about an hour ago. Apparently, Carter Blackwell, confirmed bachelor and tech billionaire, got drunk married to a casino waitress in Vegas. You're famous, babe. Also, possibly legally married to a billionaire. Emily's hands shook as she scrolled through article after article. The photos were real. The marriage license that someone had leaked to the press looked legitimate. But Emily had absolutely no memory of any of it. Jess, I swear to you, I don't remember any of this. I came home, I went to bed. I definitely did not get married. Maybe you were drugged, or had a mental break, or there's a glitch in the matrix. Before Emily could respond, there was a knock at her apartment door. A very authoritative, very insistent knock that made her stomach drop. Someone's at the door, she whispered to Jessica. Don't answer it. It's probably reporters, or lawyers, or the FBI. But Emily was already moving toward the door, some part of her knowing that ignoring this wouldn't make it go away. She looked through the peephole and saw two men in expensive suits and a woman with a tablet who screamed professional crisis management. Miss Brooks, we represent Carter Blackwell. We need to speak with you urgently about last night's events. Emily opened the door a crack, keeping the chain lock engaged. I don't remember any events from last night. The woman stepped forward, her expression professionally sympathetic. Miss Brooks, I'm Rebecca Chen, Mr. Blackwell's attorney. May we come in? This is a sensitive matter that shouldn't be discussed in a hallway. Against her better judgment, Emily let them in. Her tiny apartment suddenly felt even smaller, with 3 intimidating lawyers filling the space. Rebecca sat down on Emily's second-hand couch, like she was at a business meeting, pulling out a folder full of documents. Let me be direct, Rebecca began. At approximately 4:30 this morning, you and Carter Blackwell were married at the Little Chapel of Love on the Vegas Strip. You signed a marriage license, participated in a ceremony, and were witnessed by 2 individuals who have confirmed your identity. But I don't remember any of that. I left the casino, I talked to him in the parking garage, and then I came home. Do you remember drinking anything unusual? Accepting any beverages from Mr. Blackwell or his associates? Emily's mind raced back through the night. No, I didn't drink anything. I was working, and then I was driving home. Rebecca exchanged glances with her colleagues. Mr. Blackwell has a similar gap in his memory. His last clear recollection is speaking with you in the parking garage. His next memory is waking up in his hotel suite this morning with a wedding ring on his finger and a marriage certificate on his nightstand. So, we were both drugged? Kidnapped into a wedding? That's one theory we're exploring. However, the video footage from the chapel shows both of you appearing willing, if intoxicated. You're laughing, he's kissing you. It looks entirely consensual. Emily felt like she might throw up. Can I see the video? Rebecca hesitated, then turned her tablet around. Emily watched in surreal horror as Video Emily giggled and stumbled through wedding vows. Video Carter gazed at her with obvious adoration, and Video Elvis pronounced them husband and wife, while Video Emily threw her arms around her new husband's neck. That's not me, Emily whispered, even though it clearly was. I mean, it is me, but I would never. I don't. Miss Brooks, regardless of the circumstances, the marriage is currently legal. Mr. Blackwell is willing to file for an immediate annulment, but given the public nature of this situation, we need to coordinate our response. What kind of response? The media is having a field day with this story. Billionaire's drunken Vegas wedding. Tech titan weds casino waitress. The headlines are everywhere. Mr. Blackwell's reputation and business interests are at stake, as is your privacy and safety. Emily's phone buzzed with another call, then another. She glanced at the screen and saw dozens of notifications from numbers she didn't recognize, friend requests from strangers, and messages from reporters asking for interviews. "What do I do?" she asked, feeling panic rising in her chest. "First, don't speak to any media outlets. Second, we need you to sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding the circumstances of the marriage and its dissolution. Third, Mr. Blackwell would like to meet with you to discuss the situation personally." "Absolutely not. I don't want anything to do with him. Miss Brooks, whether you like it or not, you're legally married to one of the wealthiest men in America. This affects both of your lives. The least you can do is have a conversation." Emily wanted to refuse, to throw them all out and pretend this wasn't happening. But the logical part of her brain recognized that they were right. This was real, it was public, and ignoring it wouldn't make it go away. Fine, one conversation, but not alone, and definitely with my own lawyer present. Rebecca actually smiled. Smart. "We can arrange for independent counsel if needed. Mr. Blackwell is staying at the Bellagio penthouse." "Would 3 o'clock this afternoon work?" "Do I have a choice?" "Not really." The Bellagio penthouse was exactly as ostentatious as Emily expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Strip, modern art that probably cost more than her annual salary, furniture that looked designed for photography rather than comfort. Carter Blackwell stood by the windows, still wearing yesterday's shirt, but looking somehow put together despite obvious exhaustion. "Thank you for coming," he said, turning as Emily entered with Rebecca, and a lawyer Jessica had frantically called in as a favor. "I know this situation is insane." That's one word for it. Emily stayed near the door, arms crossed defensively. "Want to tell me what actually happened last night?" "I wish I could. My last clear memory is you telling me to avoid falling into fountains. Next thing I knew, I was waking up married. So we were drugged. Probably. My security team is reviewing all the footage they can find, tracking our movements, trying to figure out what happened." "And what have they found?" Carter gestured to a laptop on the coffee table. "We left the casino together around 4:15. There's footage of us getting into a taxi, laughing like old friends. The taxi took us to the chapel. We went inside. 20 minutes later, we came out married." "Do you remember any of it?" "No, it's a complete blank." Emily sank onto the couch, the reality of the situation crashing over her. "This is insane. We don't even know each other. We definitely didn't want to get married." "How is this possible?" "Vegas makes the impossible happen every day," Carter said with dark humor. "Usually in the form of financial losses, but apparently spontaneous marriages also qualify." Despite everything, Emily almost laughed. "So what now? We get an annulment, sign a bunch of legal papers, and pretend this never happened?" That was my first thought. But then my lawyers pointed out some complications. Rebecca stepped forward, her expression grave. "Mr. Blackwell is currently in negotiations for a major merger with a family-owned tech company. The CEO is very traditional, very conservative, and very invested in family values. A drunk Vegas wedding, followed by an immediate annulment, would be, to put it mildly, bad for business. So, what are you suggesting? A temporary delay. Stay married for a few weeks while we complete the merger, make a few public appearances as a couple, then quietly divorce once the deal is done." Emily stared at her. "You want me to fake being married to a man I don't know, so he can close a business deal? I want to offer you substantial compensation for the inconvenience, Carter interjected. Enough to quit your casino job, focus on your dance career, maybe open your own studio. All you have to do is play the role of my wife for a month. This is insane. It's practical. The marriage already happened. We might as well make it work for both of us. Emily looked at Carter, really looked at him for the first time. Without the alcohol and arrogance from last night, he seemed different. Tired, yes, but also genuine in his concern. There was something vulnerable in his expression, a crack in the billionaire facade. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "If you needed to get married for business reasons, why not find someone in your own social circle?" "Believe me, I've considered every woman I know over the past year. They all came with complications, agendas, or histories that would make this situation even messier. But you," he paused, searching for words. "You rejected me 5 times last night. You weren't impressed by my money or my name. That's exactly the kind of person I need for this. Someone you can control because they're financially vulnerable? Someone genuine who won't try to turn a temporary arrangement into something permanent." Emily wanted to be offended, but he had a point. She also couldn't deny that the money would change her life. She could pay off her student loans, help her parents who were struggling with medical bills, maybe finally pursue dance full-time instead of just as a side dream. "How much money are we talking about?" she heard herself ask. Carter named a figure that made Emily's head spin. More money than she'd make in 5 years of waitressing. Maybe 10 years. "That's a lot of money for pretending to like you for a month. Consider it hazard pay. I'm told I'm difficult to live with." "I'm shocked," Emily said dryly. "Give me a minute to think." She walked to the windows, looking out at the city that had been her home for 3 years. Vegas was a place where people came to reinvent themselves, to take risks, to chase impossible dreams. Maybe this was just another version of that. A weird, legally binding version. But still. "If I agreed, hypothetically, what would be expected of me?" Rebecca pulled out another folder. "You'd move into Mr. Blackwell's residence in San Francisco for the duration of the arrangement. Attend social events as his wife. Maintain the appearance of a genuine relationship in public. In private, you'd have your own space and autonomy. And after a month, quiet divorce, settlement payment, and you go back to your life with enough money to pursue your actual dreams." Emily turned back to face them. "I want some additions to this contract." "Such as?" "First, I want my own lawyer to review everything. Second, I want it specified that this is a non-physical arrangement. Separate bedrooms, no expectations of intimacy. Third, I want the ability to terminate the agreement immediately if you do anything that makes me uncomfortable." Carter nodded without hesitation. "Done. Anything else?" "Yeah. I want to know why you really need this marriage. The truth, not the corporate spin." Carter was quiet for a long moment, then dismissed his lawyers with a wave of his hand. Once they were alone, he sat down across from Emily, his polished demeanor dropping away. "My father built Blackwell Industries from nothing. When he died 2 years ago, he left the company to me with one condition: that I be married before my 33rd birthday. He believed that marriage would make me more responsible, more grounded, less likely to treat the company like a personal playground. And when's your birthday?" 4 weeks from today. So this drunken Vegas wedding was actually incredibly convenient timing. Suspiciously so, which is one of the reasons I'm having it investigated. Emily's eyes widened. "You think someone set this up? Drugged us deliberately so we'd get married?" "I think it's a possibility worth exploring. But regardless of how we got here, we're in this situation now. The question is whether we handle it together or let it destroy us separately." There was something disarming about his honesty. Carter Blackwell, billionaire tech genius, sitting in his penthouse admitting that he was trapped by his father's will and a mysterious wedding he couldn't remember. It was absurd enough to be true. "If I agree to this," Emily said slowly, "I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not. I'm not going to change how I dress or talk or act just to fit into your world. I wouldn't want you to. That rejection last night was the most genuine interaction I've had in years." "And you're okay with people knowing you married a waitress?" "I'm okay with people knowing I married someone real." Emily took a deep breath, knowing she was about to make either the best or worst decision of her life. "Okay, I'll do it. But I want everything in writing, reviewed by my lawyer, and I want the option to walk away at any point if this gets too weird." Carter actually smiled, genuine relief crossing his features. "Thank you. I know this is completely insane." "Completely insane," Emily agreed, "but I've done crazier things in Vegas. At least this time I'm getting paid for it." Moving into Carter Blackwell's San Francisco mansion 3 days later felt like entering a different universe. The Mediterranean-style estate sat in Pacific Heights, with views of the Golden Gate Bridge that Emily had only seen in movies. Her entire Vegas apartment could have fit in the foyer. A staff member named Margaret showed Emily to her suite, a collection of rooms that included a bedroom, sitting area, walk-in closet, and private bathroom, all decorated in tasteful neutrals that probably cost a fortune to look so effortlessly simple. "Mr. Blackwell's quarters are in the East Wing," Margaret explained, in a tone that suggested this arrangement was perfectly normal. "Your meals can be taken in the breakfast room or delivered to your suite. Is there anything specific you'll need?" "Just directions so I don't get lost," Emily joked weakly. Margaret didn't smile. "I've prepared a map of the house. Dinner is at 7 if you choose to join Mr. Blackwell." Alone in her new temporary home, Emily called Jessica, who answered on the first ring. "Okay, tell me everything. Is it as ridiculously fancy as I'm imagining?" "More." "Jess, there's actual art on the walls, like museum-quality paintings. I'm afraid to touch anything." "Have you seen him yet?" "Your husband?" Jessica said the last word with gleeful emphasis. "He was gone when I arrived. Business meeting, or saving the world, or whatever billionaires do on Tuesday afternoons." "This is so weird. A week ago you were serving him drinks. Now you're living in his mansion." "Temporarily living in his mansion while pretending to be his wife for financial compensation," Emily corrected. "Let's keep the facts straight." "Still sounds like a romance novel." "It's a business arrangement. There's nothing romantic about it." But even as Emily said the words, she remembered Carter's genuine smile when she'd agreed to help him, the vulnerability in his voice when he'd talked about his father's will. There were layers to Carter Blackwell that didn't match his public persona, and Emily wasn't sure if discovering those layers was going to make this arrangement easier or infinitely more complicated. At 6:45, Emily stood in front of her new closet, staring at clothes that had been delivered that afternoon. Designer dresses, casual wear, shoes in her exact size, all carefully selected by someone with impeccable taste and apparently unlimited funds. "This is so weird," she muttered, choosing a simple navy dress that felt appropriate for dinner without being too formal. The breakfast room, which was actually large enough to feed a dozen people, was set for 2. Carter was already there, now wearing dark jeans and a white button-down shirt that made him look more approachable than the suit from their first meeting. "How was your first day as lady of the manor?" he asked, standing as she entered. "Overwhelming. I got lost twice trying to find the kitchen." "That's better than my first week here. I got lost in my own house for an hour trying to find my bedroom." Emily laughed despite her nerves. "I find that hard to believe. I'd only seen the place once before moving in. My father bought it as an investment property, never actually lived here. When I inherited everything, I just picked the house that seemed the most excessive and moved in. That's the saddest rich person story I've ever heard. Carter's smile was rueful. I have many more where that came from. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant. The food was excellent, prepared by a chef whose name Emily immediately forgot, but whose salmon was unforgettable. More surprisingly, the conversation flowed easily. Carter asked about her dance background, her life in Vegas, her plans for the future. In return, she learned about his work in artificial intelligence, his complicated relationship with his father's legacy, and his complete inability to cook anything more complex than toast. "So let me get this straight," Emily said over dessert. "You can build a computer program that thinks like a human, but you can't make scrambled eggs?" In my defense, eggs are unpredictable. Code follows logic. Eggs follow logic. You just have to understand the logic. Says the dancer who probably thinks everything follows rhythm. Everything does follow rhythm. Business, conversation, relationships. It's all about finding the right beat. Carter studied her across the table, his expression thoughtful. "I like the way you see the world. That sounds like something you'd say to convince me you're not a complete robot." "I'm absolutely a complete robot. But I'm a robot who appreciates creative thinking." Emily found herself smiling genuinely for the first time since this whole insane situation began. Maybe living with Carter Blackwell for a month wouldn't be the nightmare she'd anticipated. That thought lasted exactly until the next morning, when she woke up to her face plastered across every tabloid and gossip website in America. Billionaire's mystery bride. "Who is Emily Brooks?" screamed the headlines, accompanied by photos of her in her Waitress uniform, her college graduation, even pictures from her high school dance recitals that someone had dug up from social media. Emily's phone was exploding with messages from old friends, distant relatives, and complete strangers who all wanted to know the same thing. How did a nobody from a small town in Oregon end up married to Carter Blackwell? "I see you've discovered the morning news," Carter said, appearing in her doorway with coffee and a tablet showing the same headlines. "They found my high school yearbook photo, Carter. My actual yearbook photo where I had braces and terrible bangs. If it helps, you look cute with braces." "It doesn't help." Emily threw a pillow at him, which he caught with surprising reflexes. "How am I supposed to show my face in public when the entire internet is dissecting my entire life?" "Welcome to my world. Population 2. Carter sat down on the edge of her bed, close enough that Emily could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. "This is the part where I'm supposed to tell you it gets easier. But honestly, it doesn't. You just learn to ignore it." "How?" "By remembering that their opinion doesn't define you. They don't know you, Emily. They know a story they've created about you, based on incomplete information. The real you is sitting here in pajamas with terrible bedhead, and that person is infinitely more interesting than their fantasy." Emily touched her hair self-consciously. "My bedhead is not that bad." "It's pretty bad." She laughed despite herself, and Carter's expression softened. "Look, I know this isn't what you signed up for. The deal was pretend to be my wife for a month, not have your entire life exposed to public scrutiny. If you want to back out, I'll understand." Emily considered it. She could walk away right now, go back to Vegas, hide from the cameras, and let this whole insane chapter of her life fade into weird memory. But the thought of giving up, of letting the tabloids and trolls win, made something stubborn rise in her chest. "No," she said firmly. "I made a deal, and I'm sticking to it. But I'm going to need some coaching on how to handle all this. That I can provide. Rebecca is scheduling media training for this afternoon, and we have our first public appearance tomorrow night." "What kind of appearance?" "Tech industry gala. Think boring speeches and expensive champagne. Sounds delightful. It will be torture, but we'll suffer through it together. The gala was exactly as tedious as promised, held in a downtown San Francisco hotel ballroom filled with tech executives, venture capitalists, and enough wealth to fund a small country. Emily wore an emerald green gown that cost more than her car, her hair professionally styled, her makeup applied by an artist who made her look like a polished version of herself. Carter appeared in her doorway wearing a tuxedo that should have been illegal for how good it made him look. "Ready for your debut as Mrs. Blackwell?" he asked, offering his arm. "As ready as I'll ever be. Remember what Rebecca taught you. Smile, deflect personal questions, and if anyone gets too invasive, I'll run interference. And what do I do when they ask how we fell in love?" Carter's expression turned mischievous. "Tell them the truth. I was an arrogant drunk. You rejected me repeatedly. And somehow, we ended up married. It's a better story than most people get." The cameras started flashing the moment they stepped out of the car. Emily's grip on Carter's arm tightened involuntarily, but he covered her hand with his, the gesture protective and surprisingly comforting. "Just breathe," he murmured. "They can't hurt you." Inside, the attention was more subtle, but no less intense. Every eye in the room seemed to track their movements, conversations pausing as they passed. Emily felt like an exotic specimen on display, the waitress who'd somehow captured a billionaire. "Is it always like this?" she whispered. "Usually worse. You're handling it beautifully." They made it through the cocktail hour with practiced smiles and vague answers about their whirlwind romance. Emily was mentally exhausted from the performance, but Carter never left her side, his hand resting on her lower back, in a gesture that felt increasingly natural. "Mr. Blackwell," a voice cut through the crowd. Emily turned to see an older man approaching, probably in his 60s, with sharp eyes and the kind of suit that screamed old money. "I heard you'd finally settled down, wanted to meet the woman who accomplished the impossible. Richard Morrison, this is my wife, Emily. Emily, Richard is the CEO of Morrison Technologies, the company Carter was trying to merge with." Emily's smile became more genuine as she understood why this introduction mattered. "It's wonderful to meet you, Mr. Morrison. Carter speaks very highly of your work." "Does he?" Richard's eyes twinkled. "That's more than his father ever did. Charles Blackwell thought my company was too traditional, too family-focused. Said I'd never compete in the modern market. And yet, you've built one of the most successful tech companies on the West Coast," Emily replied. "Seems like family focus might be a strength rather than a weakness." Richard's smile widened. "I like her, Carter. She's got sense. How did you two meet?" Emily glanced at Carter, who gave her a nearly imperceptible nod. Permission to tell the truth, or at least a version of it. "I was working at a casino in Vegas. He was there playing poker and drinking expensive scotch. We talked, argued really, and I turned him down when he asked me out." "You turned him down?" Richard looked delighted. 5 times, actually. I thought he was just another bored billionaire looking for entertainment." "And what changed your mind?" Emily looked at Carter and found herself answering with more honesty than she intended. "He surprised me. Underneath all the arrogance and expensive suits, there was someone genuine, someone worth getting to know." Carter's hand tightened slightly on her waist, and when Emily met his eyes, she saw something that looked almost like real affection. For a moment, the act felt dangerously close to truth. "Well," Richard said, clearly charmed, "if this young lady can see the good in you, Carter, perhaps I've been too harsh in my assessment. We should schedule that meeting about the merger. I think our companies might complement each other after all." After Richard walked away, Carter pulled Emily into a quiet corner, his expression a mix of amazement and gratitude. "Do you realize what you just did?" Apparently charmed a CEO who your father managed to alienate. He's been refusing to meet with me for 6 months. Said he didn't trust anyone from the Blackwell family. But one conversation with you, and suddenly he's ready to talk business. I have that effect on people. It's my superpower." Carter laughed, then did something unexpected. He pulled Emily closer and kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her heart skip. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for being you, for making this bearable." Emily's response died in her throat as she realized they weren't alone. A photographer had captured the moment. Carter's lips on her forehead, her hands resting on his chest, both of them looking at each other like the moment meant something real. "That's going to be in tomorrow's papers," she managed. "Let it. For once, let them see something true." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. More introductions, more small talk, more performance of being the happily married couple. But something had shifted between them. The touches felt less calculated, the smiles more genuine. The chemistry undeniable even when no one was watching. In the car ride home, Carter was uncharacteristically quiet, staring out the window at the passing city lights. "Are you okay?" Emily asked. "Just thinking? About how this was supposed to be simple. A business arrangement with clear boundaries and an expiration date. But you're making it complicated." "Complicated how?" Carter turned to face her, and in the dim light of the car, his expression was raw, unguarded. "You're making me forget this isn't real." Emily's breath caught. "Carter, I know this is temporary, that you're doing this for the money, that I'm not, that we're not." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Forget I said anything." But Emily couldn't forget, because she'd felt it too. That dangerous blurring of lines between performance and reality. The way her heart raced when he touched her. The way she found herself looking for him in the mornings. The way his rare, genuine smiles made her feel like she'd accomplished something meaningful. "What if we stopped pretending?" she heard herself say. "Not for the cameras, but when we're alone. What if we were just honest with each other?" "Honest about what?" "About the fact that I like being around you. That you're not the arrogant billionaire I thought you were. That this whole situation is terrifying and confusing, and I don't know what I'm doing." Carter's laugh was soft, almost relieved. "I don't know what I'm doing either. I've never done any of this before." "What, pretended to be married?" "Let someone get close. Let my guard down. Wanted something I'm not sure I should have." They sat in charged silence as the car pulled up to the mansion. The driver opened Emily's door, but she didn't move, caught in Carter's gaze. "We have 3 more weeks," she said quietly. "Maybe we should stop overthinking it and just see what happens." "That's a terrible idea. Probably the worst I've ever had." "I'm in." The next 2 weeks felt like living in a dream that Emily wasn't entirely sure she wanted to wake up from. During the day, she attended charity luncheons and business dinners at Carter's side, playing the role of supportive wife with increasing ease. But it was the evenings that became her favorite, when they'd retreat to the mansion's library and talk for hours about everything and nothing. Emily learned that Carter had taught himself to code at age 12 to escape his parents' constant fighting, that his favorite food was actually pizza, not the fancy cuisine served at galas, that he donated anonymously to dance programs in underprivileged schools because he believed everyone deserved access to art. Carter learned that Emily had dropped out of a prestigious dance company after her father's heart attack because family came first. That she'd chosen Vegas not for the glamour, but because the cost of living was low enough to let her send money home. That she still dreamed of choreographing her own show, but had convinced herself it was an impossible fantasy. "Why impossible?" Carter asked one night, as they shared wine in the library, the city glowing below them through floor-to-ceiling windows. Because people like me don't get those opportunities. You need connections, funding, the right breaks. What if you had those things? I don't. You're married to a billionaire who has extensive connections in the entertainment industry and more funding than he knows what to do with. Emily set down her wine glass. Carter, we agreed this was temporary. I can't build my career on something that's going to disappear in 2 weeks. What if it didn't disappear? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Emily's heart raced as she tried to interpret the meaning behind his words. What are you saying? I'm saying that in 2 weeks, this arrangement ends, and we go back to being strangers. Unless we don't want to be strangers. We barely know each other. I know that you take your coffee with an absurd amount of sugar. I know you dance in the kitchen when you think no one's watching. I know you call your mom every Sunday and lie about being happy because you don't want her to worry. I know you're the first person in years who's made me want to be more than my company's balance sheet. Emily's breath caught. Carter, I know this is insane. I know we agreed this was business. But somewhere between the fake smiles and the staged appearances, I started falling for my wife. And I don't know what to do about that. Before Emily could respond, Carter's phone rang with the harsh tone he'd set for emergencies. He glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened. It's my head of security. I have to take this. Emily watched as he stepped away, his body language turning tense as he listened to whoever was on the other end. When he returned, his face was grim. They found something. About the night we got married. What kind of something? Evidence that we were deliberately drugged. Security footage shows someone slipping something into our drinks at the casino. The same person then directed us to the chapel, paid for the ceremony, and disappeared. Emily's blood ran cold. Someone wanted us to get married? Why? That's what I intend to find out. My security team has identified the person from the footage. We're bringing them in for questioning tomorrow. The next day, Emily sat beside Carter in his home office as they video called with his security director. On the screen, a young woman Emily didn't recognize sat nervously in what appeared to be an interrogation room. Tell Mr. Blackwell what you told me, the security director instructed. The woman, who introduced herself as Kelly Martinez, looked directly at the camera. I was hired to make sure you two got married. I was given your photos, your schedules, and a vial of liquid to put in your drinks. I was told it was harmless, just something to make you both more suggestible. Who hired you? Carter's voice was ice cold. I don't know his real name. We met through encrypted messaging. He paid half up front, half after you got married. I'm sorry, I needed the money. And he said it was just a prank between friends, that you'd both laugh about it later. After the call ended, Carter sat in furious silence. His jaw clenched so tight Emily worried he'd crack a tooth. Someone wanted us married, he said finally. The question is who benefits from this arrangement? Emily's mind raced through possibilities. Could it be related to your father's will? Someone who wanted to make sure you met the marriage requirement. But why you specifically? Why go through the trouble of engineering a meeting between us? Maybe it wasn't about me specifically. Maybe I was just convenient, someone who happened to be there when they decided to implement their plan. Carter shook his head. No, this was too calculated. They knew your schedule, knew you'd be working that night, knew I'd be at that casino. This was targeted. A horrible thought occurred to Emily. What if whoever did this is planning to expose the marriage as a fraud? They have evidence that we were drugged, that the marriage wasn't consensual. They could destroy your reputation and tank the merger. Or they could use it as blackmail. As if summoned by their speculation, Carter's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He opened it, and Emily watched his face go pale. What is it? Carter turned the screen toward her. The message was brief but chilling. Enjoying married life? Would be a shame if certain details about your wedding night went public, awaiting instructions for payment. Someone's blackmailing us, Emily whispered. Not us. Me. This is about money and leverage. Carter immediately forwarded the message to his security team and legal counsel. Don't worry. I've dealt with blackmail attempts before. How often does this happen to you? More than you'd think. Being wealthy makes you a target. But this felt different than a simple extortion attempt. Someone had gone to elaborate lengths to create this situation, drugging them, engineering a marriage, and now demanding payment to keep quiet about the circumstances. This was personal. Over the next 48 hours, the blackmailer sent increasingly aggressive messages, demanding $10 million to keep the story quiet. Carter's team worked around the clock to trace the communications, but whoever was behind this was using sophisticated encryption and routing techniques. We should just pay them, Emily said on the third day, exhausted from the stress. $10 million is nothing to you. Pay them and make this go away. Paying blackmailers never makes them go away. It just tells them you're willing to pay more. Then what do? We call their bluff. Tomorrow night is the Morrison merger announcement gala. We attend. We present a united front, and we dare them to expose us. That's incredibly risky. Yes, but I'm done letting someone else control my life. There was something fierce in Carter's expression, a determination that Emily found both terrifying and admirable. He was willing to risk everything rather than bow to threats. Okay, she said. We do this together. Carter pulled her into his arms, holding her close in a way that had nothing to do with performance or contracts. I'm sorry you got dragged into this mess. I walked into your office voluntarily, well, accidentally. But still voluntarily. That was your mistake, Emily Brooks Blackwell, getting tangled up with me. Emily pulled back to look up at him. Actually, I'm starting to think it might be the best mistake I ever made. The kiss happened without planning, without thought. One moment they were looking at each other. The next, Carter's lips were on hers, with a desperation that matched the chaos surrounding them. Emily kissed him back with equal intensity, all the confusion and fear and unexpected affection pouring into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Carter rested his forehead against hers. This is complicated, he murmured. So complicated. We should probably stop. Probably. Neither of them moved. Instead, Carter kissed her again, softer this time, like he was trying to memorize the feeling. Emily let herself sink into it, let herself forget about blackmailers and contracts, and the fact that, in less than a week, their arrangement was supposed to end. For this moment, they were just two people who'd found something unexpected in the midst of chaos. And that was enough. The Morrison merger gala was the most important event of Carter's career, and Emily could feel the tension radiating from him as they prepared. She wore a stunning silver gown that made her feel like a movie star, her hair swept into an elegant updo, diamonds Carter had insisted she wear glittering at her throat. You look incredible, Carter said, appearing in her doorway in a black tuxedo that made Emily's mouth go dry. So do you. Very James Bond. Let's hope this evening doesn't end with car chases and explosions. The night is young. They arrived at the venue to a barrage of cameras and reporters. The story of the billionaire's whirlwind romance had captivated the public, and everyone wanted to see the happy couple. Emily smiled and waved, Carter's hand firm on her back, both of them performing their roles perfectly. Inside, Richard Morrison greeted them warmly, pleased to announce that the merger was moving forward. The deal would create one of the largest tech companies in the country, combining Morrison's hardware expertise with Blackwell's software innovation. This is a momentous occasion, Richard said during his speech, made possible not just by business acumen, but by family. Carter's father and I could never find common ground. But Carter and his lovely wife have shown me that the next generation understands what truly matters. Emily felt Carter's hand squeeze hers as they stood together, presenting the image of perfect partnership. But her attention kept drifting to the crowd, searching for anyone who looked suspicious, anyone who might be the blackmailer ready to expose them. That's when she saw him. Marcus Chen, Carter's former business rival, watching them with an expression of barely concealed triumph. Emily had heard Carter mention Marcus before, the man who'd tried to sabotage several of Carter's deals over the years. "Carter," she whispered, 10 o'clock. Is that Marcus Chen?" Carter followed her gaze, and his expression hardened. "Yes. And he shouldn't be here. This is a private event." Before they could react, Marcus approached, champagne in hand, and malice in his smile. "Congratulations on the merger, Blackwell, and on your marriage. Though I have to wonder about the timing. So convenient that you found a wife right when you needed one. Careful, Marcus, your jealousy is showing." "Jealousy? Why would I be jealous? I'm about to become very wealthy." Carter went very still. "What are you talking about?" "Let's just say I have some information that certain media outlets would pay dearly for. Information about how you and your lovely wife really met, about the drugs in your system that night, about the very questionable circumstances of your marriage." Emily's blood turned to ice. Marcus was the blackmailer. "You orchestrated this," Carter said, his voice deadly quiet. "You had us drugged and married so you could use it against me. I simply created an opportunity and captured it on film. Your security team is very thorough, but they missed one camera angle at the chapel. The angle that shows your blushing bride being barely conscious through the ceremony. You're insane. I'm practical, and in about 5 minutes, unless you wire $10 million to my account, every news outlet in the country will receive a very interesting video package." Carter moved so fast Emily barely saw it. One moment Marcus was smirking. The next, Carter had him by the collar, his face inches from Marcus's. "You made one critical mistake," Carter said quietly. "You threatened my wife. She's not really your wife. She's an actress you hired to play a role. Wrong. She's the woman I love. And I will destroy you before I let you hurt her." The declaration hung in the air, shocking everyone, including Emily. Marcus's smile faltered as he realized Carter wasn't bluffing. "You're willing to risk everything for a gold digger you barely know? I'm willing to risk everything for the woman who makes me want to be better than my worst impulses. Unlike you, I've learned that some things matter more than money or power." Security was already approaching, alerted by Carter's legal team who'd been monitoring the situation. Within minutes, Marcus was being escorted from the building, while his demands and threats fell on deaf ears. "How did you know he'd be here?" Emily asked, as they watched Marcus being removed. "I didn't. But my team has been tracking him since the blackmail messages started. We had enough evidence of his involvement to force his hand tonight. So, this was a setup? More like a calculated risk. I knew if we presented a strong front, he'd panic and reveal himself." Emily stared at Carter, processing everything that had just happened. "You used us as bait. I used myself as bait. You were supposed to be safely in the background." "Did you mean it?" Emily asked quietly. "What you said to Marcus about loving me?" Carter turned to face her fully, and in his eyes, she saw none of the calculated control from their first meeting. Instead, there was raw vulnerability and hope. Every word. "I know this started as a business arrangement. I know we agreed it would end once the merger was complete. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being my fake wife and started being the person I can't imagine living without." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. "This is insane. We've known each other for less than a month." "I know." We got married because someone drugged us and manipulated the situation. I know. And I'm completely, terrifyingly in love with you." Carter's smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. Thank God, because I was running out of dramatic declarations. He kissed her in front of everyone, the gathered business executives and society reporters and security teams. Kissed her like she was the only person in the room. Emily kissed him back, pouring months of confusion and fear and unexpected joy into the connection. When they finally broke apart, the room erupted in applause. Richard Morrison was beaming, clearly delighted by the romantic drama. Even Carter's typically stoic legal team looked pleased. "So what now?" Emily asked, still wrapped in Carter's arms. "Now we finish this gala, close the merger, and decide what our actual marriage looks like. You want to stay married? For real? I want to start over. Do this properly. Date my wife, get to know her without blackmail or contracts hanging over our heads, and see where this goes." That might be the sanest thing you've ever said. Don't get used to it. I'm still a disaster in most areas of my life. Lucky for you, I like disasters. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and celebration. The merger was official. Marcus's blackmail attempt had failed, and somehow, against all odds, Emily had found something real with the man she'd married by accident. It wasn't until they were back in the car heading home that the reality of the situation hit Emily. "Carter, what about the original plan? The divorce, the settlement, me going back to my life? Do you want that?" "No, but I also don't want you to feel obligated to stay married just because we caught feelings." Carter took her hand, threading their fingers together. "Emily, I don't feel obligated. I feel lucky, terrified, confused, and completely out of my depth. But lucky. We're really doing this, making this marriage real? If you want to. No pressure, no contracts, just two people who accidentally found each other and decided to see what happens next." Emily thought about the past month. The chaos and fear and unexpected moments of connection. She thought about who she'd been before walking into Carter's office and who she was becoming beside him. Most importantly, she thought about the future she'd glimpsed in his eyes, full of possibility and promise. "Okay," she said, "let's do this. Let's be actually married." "Just like that?" "Just like that. But I have conditions." Carter laughed. "Of course you do. First, I want to keep working. Maybe not as a waitress, but I need my own purpose beyond being your wife. Already planned on it. I've been talking to some people about funding for your dance studio. Second, we do this at our own pace. No rushing, no pressure to fit someone else's timeline. Agreed. And third, you have to learn to make scrambled eggs. I can't be married to a man who can't handle basic breakfast foods. That seems unnecessary. Those are my terms." Carter pulled her closer, his smile soft in the dim car. "Deal. Anything else?" "Yeah. Kiss me again. For real this time. Not for cameras or contracts or anyone else. Just for us." So he did. The next 6 months transformed Emily's life in ways she never could have imagined. The dance studio became a reality, a beautiful space in downtown San Francisco where Emily taught classes and began developing her first full-length production. Carter kept his promise to stay out of the creative side, but his connections brought opportunities Emily had only dreamed about. Their marriage evolved from performance to partnership, learning each other's rhythms and habits. Emily discovered that Carter was grumpy before coffee, terrible at remembering to eat lunch, and surprisingly sentimental about silly things like the mug she'd bought him from a tourist shop. Carter learned that Emily hogged blankets, sang off-key in the shower, and cried at commercials when she was tired. They argued about normal things, stupid things, and learned to apologize when they were wrong. Emily met Carter's extended family and won over even his skeptical aunt with her directness and humor. Carter attended every one of Emily's dance recitals and performances, sitting in the front row with obvious pride. "I never thought I could have this," Carter admitted one night, as they lay together watching the city lights through their bedroom windows. "Have what?" "Normal. A wife who argues with me about whose turn it is to load the dishwasher. Someone who sees me as Carter, not the Blackwell heir or the tech billionaire." Emily propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "You know what I never thought I'd have? A husband who remembers my coffee order and learns to make scrambled eggs, even though he still burns them half the time. I'm improving. You're hopeless, but you're my hopeless." Carter pulled her down for a kiss, soft and sweet and familiar. "I love you. You know that?" "I know. I love you too. Even though I burned dinner last week? Especially because you burned dinner trying to surprise me with a romantic meal." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Emily's studio thrived, with students ranging from children to adults rediscovering their passion for movement. Carter's company continued to grow, the Morrison merger proving even more successful than projected. They hosted dinner parties, traveled to places Emily had only seen in pictures, and built a life that felt authentically theirs. But the universe, as Emily was learning, had a way of throwing curveballs when you least expected them. She missed her period in month 7 of their real marriage. Then, she missed another one. The pregnancy test she took in secret showed 2 pink lines that made her heart race with equal parts joy and terror. Emily sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the test, trying to figure out how to tell Carter. They hadn't talked about kids. They were still figuring out being married. A baby would change everything. "Emily, you've been in there for 20 minutes. Are you okay?" Carter's concerned voice came through the door. Emily took a deep breath, opened it, and wordlessly handed him the test. She watched his face cycle through confusion, shock, and then pure, radiant joy. "You're pregnant?" "Apparently." "Surprise." Carter laughed, a slightly hysterical sound, and pulled her into his arms. I don't even know what this is. Are you happy? Because if you're not ready, we can." "Happy? Emily, I'm terrified and ecstatic and completely unprepared, which means I'm perfectly on brand for our relationship." Emily felt tears of relief stream down her face. "I'm scared, Carter. I don't know how to be a mother. I can barely keep a plant alive. Good thing babies are more resilient than plants. We'll figure it out together." "You really think we can do this?" Carter cupped her face in his hands, his expression serious. "Emily, we got drugged and accidentally married by a vindictive business rival, turned a fake arrangement into real love, and built a life neither of us expected. Compared to that, raising a kid should be easy. That's terrible logic. It's the only logic I have." The pregnancy progressed with typical complications. Morning sickness that lasted all day, mood swings that left Carter bewildered, and food cravings that had him making midnight runs to 3 different stores to find the exact right kind of pickle. Emily's mother flew in from Oregon, delighted to be becoming a grandmother. Carter's family rallied around them with surprising enthusiasm. Even his difficult aunt offering advice and baby clothes. The studio had to temporarily close for Emily's maternity leave, but her assistant director kept classes running smoothly. "How are you feeling?" Carter asked one evening in her 8th month, as Emily sat uncomfortably on the couch with swollen feet elevated. "Like I swallowed a watermelon that's trying to escape through my ribs. Other than that, fantastic." "You're beautiful." "I'm enormous. Enormously beautiful." Emily threw a pillow at him. "Stop being sweet. I'm trying to be grumpy." "Noted. Would it help if I complained about my day?" "Actually, yes. Tell me about normal grown-up problems that have nothing to do with my inability to see my own feet. So Carter told her about the tech conference, the difficult client, the new product launch that was running behind schedule. Emily listened, enjoying the normalcy of it, the reminder that the world continued beyond her pregnancy discomfort. "I love this," she said suddenly. "Complaining about work? No. This. Us. The way we can just be together without it being a performance or a contract. The way you make me laugh even when I feel like a beached whale." Carter sat beside her, taking her hand. "You know what I love? The fact that we took the worst possible beginning and turned it into the best possible life. That's not luck, Emily. That's us being stubborn enough to fight for something good. When did you get so wise?" "Since I married a woman who refuses to let me wallow in my own cynicism." Their daughter arrived 3 weeks early. In the middle of the night, during a rainstorm that knocked out power to half the city, Emily labored by candlelight while Carter held her hand and tried not to panic. When the baby finally entered the world with a healthy cry, both parents burst into tears. "She's perfect," Emily whispered, holding the tiny bundle against her chest. "She's terrifying," Carter replied, staring at his daughter with awe. "We're responsible for keeping that alive. Too late to back out now." They named her Grace because, as Carter said, she was their unexpected grace, the gift neither of them knew they needed. Grace had Emily's dark hair and Carter's green eyes, and a cry that could wake the entire house at 3 in the morning. Parenthood was exhausting and wonderful, and nothing like Emily expected. Carter was shockingly good with late-night feedings, claiming that his years of insomnia finally had a purpose. Emily discovered reserves of patience she didn't know she possessed, and a fierce protective instinct that would have terrified her before. "Remember when our biggest concern was fake marriage contracts?" Emily asked one night, as they sat together, watching Grace sleep in her bassinet. "Remember when you rejected me 5 times in one night?" "Best decisions I ever made. If I'd said yes right away, we might have actually had a normal relationship. Where's the fun in that?" Emily leaned against his shoulder, feeling the steady comfort of his presence. "I'm glad we did everything backward. Got married before we dated. Fell in love after we signed contracts. Had a baby before we figured out how to be a couple. Most people would call that a disaster. Most people are boring." Carter kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Emily Brooks. Accidentally. Permanently. Completely. I love you too, even though you still burn eggs. I made decent eggs this morning. They were edible. That's not the same as decent. You're very critical for someone who married me by accident. Lucky for you, I'm stuck with you now. Luckiest day of my life." Grace's first year passed in a blur of sleepless nights and tiny milestones. Her first smile, her first laugh, her first attempts at crawling that involved more determination than actual movement. Emily returned to the studio part-time, finding a balance between motherhood and her passion for dance. Carter learned to schedule important meetings around family time, something the old Carter would never have considered. "Your life has changed quite a bit," Richard Morrison observed during a casual lunch meeting. The merger had evolved into a genuine friendship between the two men. "When we first met, you were all business all the time. Now you leave work at 5 to have dinner with your family." "Turns out there are things more important than quarterly earnings," Carter replied. "Your father would be proud, not of the early departures, but of the man you've become." Carter thought about that later, about the father who'd built an empire, but missed out on a life. The man who'd used a will to force his son into marriage, never imagining it might actually lead to happiness. In a strange way, his father's manipulation had given Carter the greatest gift of his life. Emily's dance company premiered their first full production when Grace was 18 months old. The show was a contemporary piece about unexpected journeys and found family, inspired loosely by her own story. Carter sat in the audience with Grace on his lap, both of them watching Emily move across the stage with breathtaking grace. "Mama!" Grace squealed when she recognized Emily, causing several people around them to laugh. "Yes, that's Mama," Carter whispered, being absolutely brilliant. The show received standing ovations and critical acclaim. Emily took her bows with tears streaming down her face, finding Carter and Grace in the audience. This was the dream she'd almost given up on, made possible by the most unlikely series of events. At the after-party, surrounded by friends and family, Emily found herself thinking about the girl who'd walked into the wrong office 2 years ago. That Emily had been so focused on survival, on making rent and paying bills, that she'd forgotten to dream big. This Emily, the one who'd accidentally married a billionaire and somehow made it work, had learned that sometimes the best things in life came from the unexpected. "Penny for your thoughts," Carter said, appearing beside her with Grace dozing on his shoulder. "Just thinking about fate and accidents, and how one wrong turn can change everything. Are you happy it happened? All of it? Even the weird drugging and blackmail parts?" Emily pretended to consider. "The blackmail I could have done without. But the rest? Yeah. I'm happy." "Just happy? Okay. I'm ridiculously, impossibly, stupidly happy. You're very smug about it, aren't you?" "Extremely. I found an amazing wife, became a father, and learned to make decent scrambled eggs. I'm basically winning at life. Your eggs are still questionable, but improving." They stood together, watching their friends celebrate, their daughter sleeping peacefully between them. This was Emily's life now. Not the struggling waitress from Vegas, not the fake wife playing a role, but a woman who'd found her place in the world through the strangest possible path. "You know what I realized today," Emily said. "What's that?" "If someone had told me 2 years ago that I'd be here, married to you, with a beautiful daughter and my own dance company, I would have thought they were insane. And now? Now, I think maybe insane is underrated. Sometimes the craziest paths lead to the best destinations." Carter shifted Grace gently to kiss Emily properly, unbothered by the knowing smiles from the people around them. "I love you, and I love the life we've built from absolutely nothing. We built it from a mistake. Best mistake ever made." As the party continued around them, Emily thought about all the small moments that had led to this one. The decision to take an extra shift at the casino, the wrong turn into Carter's office, the insane agreement to pretend to be married. Every single choice, good and bad, had brought her to this exact spot. "Hey, Carter." "Thanks for being a drunk billionaire playing poker that night. Thanks for rejecting me 5 times. Really built character. Someone had to keep your ego in check. And you've done an excellent job. I'm barely arrogant anymore." Emily laughed, the sound drawing Grace's sleepy attention. Their daughter looked up at them both with Carter's green eyes and smiled, perfectly content in her father's arms. This was happiness, Emily realized. Not the fairy tale kind with perfect moments and dramatic declarations, but the real kind, built on daily choices and shared laughter and love that grew deeper with time. It was messy and complicated, and sometimes involved burned eggs and 3 a.m. diaper changes. But it was theirs, built from nothing, strengthened by challenges, and somehow more real than anything Emily had planned for herself. Later that night, after Grace was asleep and the party was over, Emily and Carter stood on their balcony watching the city lights. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't gotten drugged that night?" Emily asked. "If I'd just gone home and you'd gone back to your hotel room and our paths never crossed again?" "Sometimes. Then I remember that even without the drugs, I would have found a way to track you down. You fascinated me from the moment you first rejected me. That's slightly stalkerish. I prefer determined. You would." Carter wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. I don't believe in fate or destiny, or any of that mystical stuff. But I do believe that sometimes two people meet at exactly the right moment, even if the circumstances are completely wrong. That's surprisingly romantic for a tech billionaire. I've been taking lessons from my wife. Your wife is a very good teacher. The best. They stood in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way possible and decided to make it work. The journey hadn't been smooth or logical or anything they'd planned, but it had been theirs. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Emily turned in Carter's arms to face him. You know what? I'm glad we woke up married in Vegas, even with all the crazy that came with it. Me too. Best-worst decision I never actually made. Here's to poor choices and unexpected consequences, and to the woman who makes all my disasters worthwhile. They kissed under the stars, the city sprawling beneath them, their sleeping daughter peaceful in the next room. This was their life now. Messy, imperfect, built on the shakiest possible foundation, and absolutely perfect. 3 years after the accidental Vegas wedding, Emily stood in the wings of a major theater, watching her company prepare for their biggest performance yet. The production had been invited to perform at the Kennedy Center, an honor that still felt surreal. From casino waitress to choreographer with a nationally recognized company, the transformation seemed impossible. But then again, her entire life had become a series of impossibilities. Mama. Mama! Grace ran toward her, escaping from Carter, who was supposed to be keeping her entertained in the audience. Gracie, you're supposed to be with Daddy. I wanted to see you dance. Emily scooped up her 3-year-old, marveling at how quickly she was growing. I'm not dancing tonight, baby. My dancers are performing. But you're the best dancer. You're biased. Carter appeared, slightly out of breath from chasing their energetic daughter. Sorry, she's fast and stubborn. Wonder where she gets that from. Definitely your side of the family, Emily replied innocently. Lies and slander. Grace wiggled to be put down, immediately fascinated by the costumes and backstage chaos. Emily watched her daughter with a mix of pride and terror. Grace had inherited her mother's love of movement and her father's fearless curiosity, a combination that kept both parents on their toes. Nervous? Carter asked, reading Emily's expression easily after years together. Terrified. This is the biggest venue we've ever performed in. What if they hate it? They won't hate it. Your work is brilliant. You're biased. Absolutely. But also correct. The stage manager called for places, and Emily had to focus on last-minute details. Carter took Grace back to their seats, and Emily took her position in the wings to watch her choreography come to life. The performance was flawless. Every movement she'd envisioned, every emotional beat she'd planned, translated perfectly to the stage. The audience was captivated, and when the final curtain fell, the standing ovation seemed to last forever. Emily took her bow alongside her dancers, overwhelmed by the moment. She found Carter and Grace in the audience, both on their feet applauding wildly. Grace was jumping up and down, shouting, "That's my mama!" to anyone who would listen. This was success, not measured in money or status, but in the realization of a dream she'd almost let die. Backstage after the show, Emily was surrounded by well-wishers and reporters. The story of her journey from Vegas waitress to celebrated choreographer had captured public imagination, especially combined with her unconventional romance with Carter Blackwell. How does it feel to have come so far? One reporter asked. Surreal. 3 years ago, I was serving drinks and teaching dance classes in my spare time. Now I'm here because someone believed in my vision enough to make it possible. You're talking about your husband's financial support. I'm talking about having a partner who encourages you to chase impossible dreams. The money helps, but the belief is what matters. Later, at the celebration dinner, Richard Morrison raised a glass in toast. To Emily, whose talent proves that sometimes the best investments are in people, not companies. "Hear, hear," Carter agreed, his arm around Emily's shoulders. "Speech!" someone called, and the table took up the chant. Emily stood reluctantly, unused to being the center of attention in social settings. Okay, I'll keep this short. 3 years ago, I made a series of questionable decisions that led me here. I married a stranger, agreed to a fake relationship for money, and somehow turned it into the most real thing in my life." Carter reached for her hand, squeezing gently. "I learned that sometimes the wrong paths lead to the right places. That mistakes can become miracles if you're brave enough to see them through, and that the best things in life are the ones you never saw coming." "To unexpected blessings," Richard toasted. "To stubborn wives who make us better," Carter added. "To Mama's dancing," Grace contributed, making everyone laugh. The dinner continued late into the night, filled with laughter and storytelling. Emily watched Carter interact with their friends, still amazed at how much he'd changed from the arrogant billionaire she'd first met. He was softer now, more open, quicker to laugh and slower to judge. "You're staring," he murmured, catching her watching him. "Just appreciating the view. The view appreciates being appreciated. That doesn't make grammatical sense. I'm a billionaire. Grammar is optional." Emily rolled her eyes, but couldn't help smiling. This was her life now. Witty banter with her accidentally acquired husband, celebrating professional success, raising a daughter who had both of their stubborn streaks. Later, in their hotel suite, after Grace was asleep and the excitement had faded, Emily and Carter found themselves reflecting on their journey. "Do you ever miss the simplicity of your old life?" Carter asked as they prepared for bed. "You mean when my biggest stress was difficult customers and making rent?" "Yeah." Emily considered the question seriously. "Sometimes. But then I remember that simple isn't always better. This life is complicated and crazy and sometimes overwhelming, but it's mine. Ours. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Not even for a normal courtship and traditional marriage. Especially not for that. We're not traditional people, Carter. Why should our story be traditional?" Carter pulled her close, and Emily settled against his chest with familiar ease. "I'm proud of you, you know. What you've built with your company, the way you've pursued your dreams without compromising who you are. I learned from the best. You built an entire empire on your own terms. And nearly lost my humanity in the process. You brought it back. We brought it back to each other." They lay in comfortable silence, listening to Grace's soft breathing from the adjoining room. 3 years ago, Emily had been alone, struggling, convinced her dreams were dead. Now she had a family, a career, and a future brighter than anything she'd imagined. "Carter." Thank you for being drunk in Vegas that night." He laughed quietly. "Thank you for being stubborn enough to reject me. And thank you to whoever drugged us, I guess. That's weird to say. Extremely weird, but oddly appropriate for us." Emily shifted to look up at him. "Do you think we would have found our way to each other eventually, if circumstances had been different?" "I think we would have found our way to this exact moment, no matter what path we took, because some things are inevitable." That's very philosophical for someone who claims not to believe in fate. I don't believe in fate. I believe in stubborn people making impossible things work. Are we impossible? We're definitely improbable. But we're also here, happy, building a life that works for us. That's not fate. That's choice. Emily kissed him softly, grateful for every strange twist that had led them here. Best choice I never consciously made. Same. 5 years into their accidentally on purpose marriage, Emily woke up to familiar nausea and an even more familiar realization. She took the test while Carter was out for his morning run, staring at the 2 pink lines with a mix of emotions. Grace was 4 now, independent and hilarious, and just starting preschool. They'd found their rhythm as parents, figured out the balance between career and family. A second baby would disrupt everything they'd carefully built. It would also be wonderful. "Mama!" Grace appeared in the bathroom doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. "Why are you crying?" "Happy tears, baby. Just happy tears." "Are you happy because Daddy's coming home soon?" "Something like that." Emily heard the front door open, Carter returning from his run. She made a split-second decision, grabbing the pregnancy test and heading downstairs. Carter was in the kitchen drinking water, still slightly out of breath. He'd taken up running 2 years ago after realizing that fatherhood required stamina he didn't naturally possess. Emily loved him for trying. "Good run?" she asked casually. "Brutal. I think I'm getting old." "You're 37. That's not old." "Tell that to my knees." He turned to face her fully, then noticed her expression. "What's wrong?" Emily held up the test. "Surprise." Carter's eyes widened. "You're pregnant again." "Apparently. Are you okay with that?" Instead of answering, Carter picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. Grace, watching from the doorway, demanded to be included in the hug. "What's happening?" Grace asked. "You're going to be a big sister," Carter told her. "I am?" "You are." Grace considered this information seriously. "Will the baby like elephants?" "Probably. Elephants are very popular." "Okay then, I'll share my elephant." Emily met Carter's eyes over their daughter's head, both of them silently acknowledging the perfection of the moment. Their family was growing, their life was full, and somehow, everything had worked out. The second pregnancy was easier than the first, maybe because Emily knew what to expect, or maybe because she was too busy chasing Grace to focus on discomfort. Carter was even more attentive this time, having learned from experience what Emily needed. "You're going to spoil me," Emily protested, when he showed up with her favorite ice cream at 2 in the morning. "That's the plan. You're growing a human. The least I can do is provide frozen dairy products." "You've thought this through." "I'm a strategic thinker." "You're a softie who can't say no to his pregnant wife." Also accurate. Their son arrived on a sunny September morning, quick and uncomplicated compared to Grace's dramatic entrance. They named him James, after Emily's father, and he had Carter's dark hair and Emily's brown eyes. Grace was fascinated by her baby brother, insisting on helping with everything from diaper changes to bath time. Carter documented every moment on his phone, filling their cloud storage with thousands of photos of their growing family. "We should probably slow down," Emily joked when James was 6 months old. "At this rate, we'll have a basketball team by the time I'm 40. "Would that be so bad?" "Carter Blackwell, are you suggesting we have more children?" "I'm suggesting that whatever happens, we'll figure it out." "We're good at that." Emily couldn't argue with his logic. They had figured out everything else, from accidental marriages to blackmail attempts to balancing careers and parenthood. More kids would just be another adventure. But 2 felt perfect for now. Grace and James, 4 years apart, already devoted to each other in the way of siblings. Emily's dance company continued to thrive, and Carter had started a foundation funding arts education in underserved communities. "Look at us," Emily said one evening, as they watched their children play together in the living room. "Accidentally becoming responsible adults." "Speak for yourself. I'm still winging it." "You're an excellent father." "I'm a father who Googles how to braid hair at midnight, Because Grace wants fancy hair for school. The fact that you're trying is what matters. Carter pulled her close, and Emily settled into his embrace with the ease of long practice. This was her favorite time of day, when the chaos settled, and they could just be together. "Do you ever think about that first night?" she asked. "In Vegas, before everything went crazy?" "Sometimes. I think about how certain I was that I didn't need anyone, that relationships were distractions from building my empire. And now? Now I realize the empire is meaningless without someone to share it with. You gave me perspective, Emily. You gave me a life worth living beyond quarterly earnings and board meetings. You gave me the courage to dream bigger than survival. We gave each other exactly what we needed. Even though it started with drugging and blackmail and fake marriages. Especially because of that. We had to fight for this, Carter. We had to choose each other every day, even when it would have been easier to walk away. That makes it more real than any conventional romance." Carter kissed the top of her head. "I love you. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. I love you too. Even when you burn breakfast. I've gotten much better at breakfast. You've gotten marginally better. There's a difference." Their playful argument was interrupted by Grace, demanding that Daddy read her favorite bedtime story for the third night in a row. Carter groaned, but went willingly, and Emily followed with James in her arms. This was family. Messy, and loud, and perfectly imperfect. Built on the shakiest possible foundation, and somehow stronger for it. As Emily tucked James into his crib and listened to Carter read to Grace with exaggerated voices that made their daughter giggle, she thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago. Scared, struggling, convinced her life would always be about getting by rather than living fully. That Emily would never have believed this was possible. The mansion, the family, the career, the love. It would have seemed like a fairy tale, too good to be true. But this Emily, the one who'd taken risks and made impossible choices and somehow ended up here, knew the truth. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. Because fairy tales were about magic and destiny and things that happened to you. This life was about choices and chances and things you built with your own hands, with the person who stood beside you through everything. "Mama," Grace called from her room. "Come say goodnight." Emily joined her family, squeezing into Grace's bed beside Carter. They'd long since given up on traditional bedtime routines, finding that pile-on family cuddles worked better than strict schedules. "Love you, Mama," Grace whispered, already half asleep. "Love you too, baby girl." "Love you, Daddy." "Love you more," Carter replied, his voice soft with affection. Emily lay there between her husband and daughter, their son sleeping peacefully in the next room, and felt overwhelmed by gratitude. For wrong turns that led to right places, for mistakes that became blessings, for a man who'd started as a stranger and become her everything. "Best accidental marriage ever," she whispered to Carter. "Only accidental marriage ever, I hope." "Obviously. I'm not in the habit of getting drugged and married." "Good to know. I'd hate to have competition." Emily laughed quietly, careful not to wake Grace. "You'll always be my first and only Vegas wedding disaster. And you'll always be the woman who rejected me 5 times and somehow ended up stuck with me anyway. Stuck with you." That's one way to phrase lifelong commitment. You knew what you were getting into. Actually, I had no idea what I was getting into. That's kind of the point. Carter shifted to look at her, careful not to disturb their sleeping daughter. "Regrets?" "Not a single one." "You?" "Only that it took getting drugged for me to find you. I wish I'd been smart enough to chase after you that night without chemical assistance. If you had, I probably would have called security." Fair point. They lay together in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of knowing someone completely. Emily thought about all the small moments that had led to this one. Every choice, every compromise, every argument and reconciliation. This was marriage, not the fairy tale version with perfect moments, but the real version built on daily choices to choose each other, to forgive mistakes, celebrate victories, and face challenges as a team. Carter? Thanks for waking up married to me. Thanks for being worth waking up to. 10 years after the infamous Vegas wedding, Emily stood in front of a full-length mirror adjusting her gown. Tonight was the 10th anniversary celebration, a milestone that felt both impossible and perfectly natural. Grace, now 13, and already showing signs of becoming a talented dancer herself, helped with Emily's jewelry. You look beautiful, Mom. Thank you, sweetheart. Dad's going to cry when he sees you. Your father does not cry. He totally does. He cried at my dance recital last month. Those were allergy tears. Sure they were. James burst into the room, 8 years old and full of energy. Mom, Dad says we have to leave in 5 minutes. Tell your father I'll be ready when I'm ready. He said you'd say that. Your father knows me well. Emily took one last look in the mirror. At 36, she felt more confident than she had at 26. The years with Carter had taught her to value herself, to pursue her dreams without apology, to be both soft and strong. The anniversary celebration was held at the same venue where they'd announced the Morrison merger all those years ago. Full circle, Carter had said when choosing the location. From fake marriage to real partnership, celebrated where it all became real. The guest list included family, friends, and business associates who'd watched their unlikely romance evolve. Richard Morrison was there with his wife, beaming with grandfatherly pride at the couple he'd unwittingly helped bring together. Even Marcus Chen had been invited, now a reformed character who'd become an unlikely friend after serving time for the blackmail scheme. Ready? Carter appeared in the doorway, looking distinguished in his tuxedo. 13 years of marriage hadn't diminished his appeal. If anything, the silver beginning to thread through his dark hair made him more attractive. As ready as I'll ever be. They entered the ballroom to applause, Grace and James following behind. The evening was a testament to their journey. Photo displays showing their evolution from awkward wedding pictures to family portraits. Speeches from friends recounting their favorite memories, and a renewal of vows that left half the room in tears. 10 years ago, Carter said during his vow renewal, I woke up married to a woman I barely knew. It was the best accident of my life. Emily, you've taught me that love isn't about perfect planning or logical choices. It's about choosing each other every single day, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. Emily wiped away tears, grateful for waterproof mascara. 10 years ago, I thought marrying you was the craziest thing I'd ever do. I was right. But it was also the bravest, most worthwhile decision of my life. You've given me a family, supported my dreams, and learned to make almost decent scrambled eggs. What more could a woman ask for? The room erupted in laughter. Carter's cooking skills had become a running joke among their friends. After the ceremony, during the reception, Emily found herself surrounded by well-wishers and old friends. I remember when this was all a scandal, one friend said. Billionaire's drunk Vegas wedding. Now look at you two. Relationship goals. Trust me, it's not as perfect as it looks. Nothing ever is. But you make it work. We make it work, Emily corrected. That's the secret. Not finding the perfect person, but choosing to work through imperfection together. Later, during their first dance, Carter pulled Emily close. Thank you, he murmured. For what? For rejecting me that night. For agreeing to the insane arrangement. For staying when you could have left. for building this life with me. Thank you for being worth staying for. Even with my terrible eggs? Your eggs have improved dramatically. I'd rate them almost competent now. High praise from my harshest critic. They swayed together, surrounded by the people they loved, celebrating a marriage that had started as a mistake and become the foundation of their lives. Emily thought about all the twists and turns, the challenges and triumphs, the ordinary moments that had meant more than any grand gesture. "What are you thinking?" Carter asked. "That I'd do it all over again, every single weird, complicated, impossible moment. Even the blackmail. Okay, maybe not the blackmail, but everything else. Same. Though I wish I'd found you sooner. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to. You weren't ready before that night, and neither was I. Look at you, being wise and philosophical. I've learned from years of your TED Talk-worthy speeches. I've never given a TED Talk. You give them to me constantly, usually about technology or business strategy. And you listen so patiently. I pretend to listen. There's a difference." Carter laughed, the sound filled with genuine happiness. "I love you, Emily Blackwell. I love you too, you ridiculous man." As the song ended, Grace and James joined them on the dance floor, creating a family moment that Emily knew she'd remember forever. Her children, growing so fast. Her husband, who'd become her partner in every sense. The life they'd built from absolutely nothing. "Group hug," James announced, wrapping his arms around Emily's waist. "Family hug," Grace corrected, always the eldest sibling maintaining order. Carter pulled them all close, and for a moment, the ballroom full of guests faded away. This was what mattered. Not the money, or the success, or the public perception, but these four people who'd become each other's everything. "Best mistake ever," Emily whispered to Carter. "Best mistake ever," he agreed. As the celebration continued around them, Emily reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that wrong office door in Vegas to this moment, surrounded by love and family and possibility. It hadn't been perfect. There had been fights and fears and moments of doubt. But they'd chosen each other through all of it. Chosen forgiveness over resentment, communication over silence, love over the easier option of walking away. "Mom," Grace asked, "are you crying again?" "Happy tears, sweetheart. Just happy tears." "Adults cry a lot," James observed. "When you love people this much, you feel everything more deeply," Emily explained. "The happy and the sad and everything in between." Carter squeezed her hand, understanding without words. They'd built something extraordinary from the most unlikely beginning, and every year it got stronger rather than fading. "To 10 more years," Carter toasted quietly, just for their family. "To 10 more years," Emily echoed. "To however long we get," Grace added with teenage wisdom. "However long we get to be together." And there, on the dance floor, surrounded by their children, Emily and Carter held each other close and silently agreed. However long they got, they'd make it count. They'd choose each other, choose their family, choose the life they'd accidentally stumbled into and deliberately built. Because in the end, that's what love was. Not fate or destiny or drunken accidents in Vegas, but the daily choice to stay, to fight, to build something beautiful from even the most unlikely beginnings. And they'd chosen well. The end. Don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10